Welcome to the Louchen Bros podcast. This show is hosted by Brian Louchen
and Kevin Louchen.
And we're bros who talk about nerd stuff.
So today's episode, we got a little bit of a different kind of adventure for you. We're going to get into the evolution of shooter games and the gaming industry. Mostly video games, but just in general. So we're going to start going like way back, a little old school, and kind of give you a little tour of things and how they've affected us since, video games are still something I play. I know Brian still plays them because, if you didn't know now, nerd alert, you know what I mean? So we're just going to keep rolling with this adventure. So Brian, how about you take him to class History 101 and give him the what's up?
Speak for yourself, nerd.
Fair.
Minecraft world with maps.
Hater.
Anyhow, so we got to kind of start in the beginning of the birth of shooters and kind of where everything started, which kind of starts with when video games started back in the day in the, era of the arcade era, where Pong was like the first simple gameplay where Pong, Pong, Pong.
You mean tennis? That's what that shit is.
So yeah, it was 2D, obviously in the 70s, but mostly known for, again, starting with Space Invaders, OG, shooting enemies in a stationary position, shooting, obviously, spaceships. That's kind of where it all started.
Yeah, I mean, that predates me and even you to a degree.
Yes.
But that's where it kind of starts off. I mean, I don't even think we played Atari a ton. We didn't have one. So, I mean, even that, when they first started getting into the homes, that was a little before us. We do know people that had them, because I do remember playing somebody's. I just, it was never something it was crazy. I think, if you start following it, our big pickup came when we got nope, I almost said it.
Oh my
God. Nintendo.
And we're going to cover that in a moment.
Not a sneeze. We got the knees. That's what it is.
Oh
the NES. We didn't get it when it first came out. Because that came out in like 86. And I'm pretty sure I wasn't 2 years old when I was playing that. So I think we got it a little later, but I don't know how popular it was. My memory is foggy. Do you remember it all?
So, first starting with Atari before I go into the
all right, that's
story.
fair.
So, I had an Atari Flashback actually at one point, and I got it and ended up reselling it. The Atari Flashback is when they started coming out with the systems, which had included 30 games with it. They ended up having the NES Classic and the Super Nintendo Classic and the other ones. But I had Atari Flashback and played some of the games, so I did play a little bit of the Space Invaders. I played a lot of the later ones, but I did play Pong and Space Invaders. I've watched, obviously, different movies that have included some games like this as well from the 80s, and even Ready Player One even kind of has a little throwbacks as well, which I love when they start doing that as well, too. But I didn't own or play much of Atari, but I did play a lot of the Nintendo, so I remember
the knees.
It was probably the knees. Getting the, I think it was the Action Play set. It probably was the Christmas of either 88 or 89.
Oh, okay.
And it was for all three of us as a group Christmas present. And I remember playing this for 3 days straight with you guys.
Dude,
having the freaking zapper gun, playing some Duck Hunt. I didn't know until later that I guess if you plugged in a second controller, you could actually control the ducks.
Yep.
I was like, what?
Dude, I found that out
I was like, are you kidding me?
We didn't even maximize our childhood.
I know. I'm like, what the heck? So yeah, that I remember playing the shit out of that system when we got it. Now, we were just so enamored as kids. Just playing the actual Nintendo.
Okay, what he means is he cheated like hell. He went up to that screen, you son of a gun, pun intended, and you shot those ducks at point blank range. No skill. no skill. No, I mean, who didn't do that at some point?
I know, who didn't do that, though? It's just like in skee-ball. You get closer to throw it up. And
So, yeah, it was a good time. I mean, I don't remember a whole lot of other games that used that. I think that was really almost strictly a duck hunt game.
there was a couple other games with that, but it wasn't super popular. I know, like, they even in the Back to the Future 3 movie where Marty's shooting on the gun. I guess it was called Wild Gunman and was like a shooting alley type of game. I never played it, but watching it in the movie was really cool because Marty was showing off.
Yeah, but that
his
was more.
pistol skills.
Yeah, that was more of an arcade game than an at-home game. So that's a different feature. But I mean, so that was probably one of the biggest first shooting games. And that the crazy thing is they didn't have anything else like really after that for a while. Not until you hit really arcade games themselves, you know?
Well, and that's where kind of different shooters kind of came into play when they started with that. And that's where you started having, like, the run-and-gun type shooters like Contra. Do you still remember the Konami code, Kev?
Up, down, left, right. BA, select start.
There we go!
Like
see? Still to this day, baby!
The only thing people heard is we're fucking cheaters. That's all that they fucking heard. That's all it is. Game Genie, but we won't get into that.
Oh, I got a Game Genie, by the way, so...
I mean, it was as I like to call it, side-scrolling shooters. You know, like you were, because it's 2D. You know, you just go left to right, and that's what it was. And we played the crap out of Contra, and it was really cool too because it was also a 2-player game, which there wasn't a lot like the time. At least that I remember that were popular, right? You didn't play a lot. I mean, we had things like Mega Man, which was pretty sweet.
Yes, Mega Man was OG. I really remember playing Mega Man 2 and 3 the most, and if kids go back, or even you go back to this day and play it, they are hard as balls, dude.
I do believe the kids say dead ass. Maybe that's what they are. They're just dead, you know. It's so much harder in a sense because it was so repetitive. It was so manipulated with your movement. So all you had to do is time it, and then. You know, you get into it later about how it changed, and now going back is almost harder than the current stuff. And it doesn't make sense, but that's how it is. But I feel like we just really loved... I think what I've already noticed before we even really get into this is I think, and I'm going to reiterate this, we loved playing with people.
I definitely agree, and
that was that. That was the first real element of it in our childhood that I can recall.
But there was also good like solo games too. Sorry, I didn't want the thing. Like Metroid, like adding on to Mega Man. So they even had some solo, and this is where they kind of started getting into the story. I feel, or maybe it was the mechanics, but I feel like the story aspect was also being developed in those games as well too, before the visuals came along and the sprites, before you started going to like Super Nintendo, even in the arcades and the crossover and everything too.
I think the story is helpful. I think at that time the biggest deal was being able to do something you could never do before. So it didn't have to have a great story. There's no great story to Duck Hunt. Mario, I don't know that there's really a great story to Mario. You know what I mean? But I do believe what happened is they had fun elements. You know, Contra had this cool, simple, military guys shooting these crazy weapons. The spread gun, dude, the spread.
The spread gun, bro.
So if you had these cool things where you could, basically, if you were a kid and you wanted to be a badass G.I. Joe, this was right up your alley. You shooting guns, killing things, and being a badass is what you wanted to do as a boy when we were younger. So it was right there. But even then, like the Mega Man thing, having a fucking Samus 2, having a blaster hand, dude, that's amazing. That is amazing. Like you were like, oh, that is awesome. And then you could change like fires and ice and all these other different kinds of elements. I mean, There's no real total, in my opinion, a total story there. It had elements, and some of these stories, yeah, they had parts like the Metroid, and that just allowed it to develop and get so much better. I think with stories over time.
That was probably the first time having a decapitated hand, Kevin, feeling cool because it was like a blaster gun.
You're not wrong, because like if I was a kid and I thought about having a hand missing, if you're an amputee, and I'm not talking like people were really going for representation back then, not really like they are now, but back then, like if you could imagine yourself as this person that maybe had a disability, and now all of a sudden you almost have a superpower because of things like that. That would be an amazing feeling. And at one point I know we would imaginary play and stuff like that, and we would be like, yeah, I'm fucking Mega Man, boom, pop, pop, poof.
Dude, Legos, oh man.
So yeah, there's always elements that came out with that, and I think it helped create and mold our imagination by being able to start there. So I mean, but that's really all I remember we played as kids with that one, and the the knees one. But then we upgraded to the sneeze.
The
sneeze. The bees, knees, sneeze.
The NES or the SNES?
Knees. I'm going knees and sneeze. So then are we gonna upgrade to the sneeze, Brian?
Sure, let's upgrade to the sneeze.
Don't worry,
SNES, Kev.
We get to the 64 sneeze. Don't you worry.
Oh my god.
No, it would just be 64 knees. That's
I quit. Fucking quit.
Alright, take us on the sneeze, Brian. Take us on.
So yeah, again, games start evolving with graphics. They start going to the 8 to the 16-bit. Again, we talked about Contra, Super Contra, Mega Man X, Super Metroid. I still remember, that is still to this day probably my favorite system of all time is the Super Nintendo, because the 16-bit graphics, and even some of the games are remastering that I never even played, some of the RPGs, not to get off topic from shooters, but going back and playing Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy VI, and they're remastering some of these, oh my god, they look fucking gorgeous. So,
we could talk a little bit about 64, because I'm maxing out on 64. But anyways, with the sneeze, we got a lot of basically, they took every game from Nintendo and just said, all right, we're just going to make it super. That's all they did for everything. It was just super now. So that was always kind of funny to me. I'm like, what are they going to do? Super duper next time? No, they just did 64. But yeah, we did a lot of those games, but one of the ones I actually got into, which was more arcade-like, I played a lot, was the Super R-Type, which is more of the aerial view. They still had those games around. The graphics were a little better. You're kind of this spaceship floating around, and that. It just had elements where you can get better guns and stuff like that. And I don't know, you kind of don't know why sometimes some games hit you and it feels like this is cool, and that was one of them.
Wasn't it like Asteroids or Galaga, just better graphics,
kinda,
basically,
yeah.
or a reiteration of that?
I mean, all those kind of space games like that were kind of very similar.
And I remember Star Fox kind of starting, and I never played it.
I never did either.
Day, but on the 64,
hell yeah,
played
I
the
did.
shit out of that.
So, and that's the thing is, I look at some of the games I played later on, and I didn't even play them to begin with, and it's just kind of crazy. I was looking at just some of these newer, I don't want to say newer, but some of these games that are popular now, even that show with Fallout. Fallout apparently goes back to Nintendo or Super Nintendo or something like that. I'm like, I didn't know that. I'm like, so some of these games just carried on through and they just got more and more popular. I didn't know about it until I think it was was it on the 4? Maybe it was I don't know. But yeah, so Super Nintendo was cool. I think I didn't play the shooter games as much on Super Nintendo. They were definitely awesome games. We don't need to get into because we're trying to do the more shooters. But yeah, I think that was my biggest one. Mega Man X, I played a crap ton about, and I still love that game. It's still amazing. The graphics obviously were better, and so Super Metroid is still one of my all-time faves. And if you are, Metroid Dread is in a similar format. I highly recommend it if you can. I played it. It is pretty freaking sweet.
What's the Metroid Dread? I haven't played that one.
That one's for the Switch.
Oh,
it's a little older. It is formatted and played in the same kind of style as Super Metroid.
Okay, check it out.
If you're looking for storyline, it's kind of wait a little farther down the road, so you might miss out. But like the chorizos, whatever. I didn't say I was smart, okay? I just chozos, right? It's chozo.
I think it's chozo.
Yeah, churros, right? That's what they are. They're fucking delicious. So they're in the game still. There's the X Metroid thing. If you remember some of that, that came like a little more down the storyline. But yeah, so X-Type. Is it X-Type? I think it's X-Type. It's really cool. I recommend it. Even if you like not totally into the story, the gameplay is basically identical with more elements. So definitely highly recommend.
I still have to go back and play Metroid Prime. So
I got 1 and 2. I gotta get 3 still.
I got the remastered on the Switch, which is really cool.
I heard 4 wasn't 2. That's what I heard.
So before we jump to the 64, Kevin, I know I don't remember. Do you remember when we were younger playing, other than Mortal Kombat at the bowling alley, playing in the arcades? Because I know, shout out Galloping Ghost for freaking being legends and having like the biggest arcade in Illinois to be able to go to. Yeah,
go there when you're drunk. It's fucking a blast. I recommend it. It was a pretty fun time when I went. The only thing is you better not be claustrophobic because that is tight. It's got some tight games, but you'll play games you ain't never even heard of.
Yeah, but arcade and like PC gaming, like Wolfenstein and Doom, that's when they kind of are considered like your first true 3D shooter games that were iconic, and they started kind of having multiplayer with those types of games when, you know, again, that's when we're talking before AOL and all the internets and AIM and well, it's the messenger.
You and AOL, we don't need to get into that. Jeez, this guy.
But yeah, like, do you remember have any memories of the arcades and stuff, Kevin? I just remember going to the bowling alley because I think Mom was on a bowling league and we played the shit out of Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, I used to play so much Mortal Kombat, but that's like so. Normally, we didn't. The gun games back then at the arcade weren't the greatest at that time. It's probably going to be at least another 5 to 10 years before they get better. And yeah, we'll cover that a little bit, I think. But I think at this point, Super Nintendo provided so much fun in video games, but I don't feel like it was the shooter style. That picked up big time in our next console. Brian, hit it! Beep, boop, beep, boop. Okay, just go on.
Nintendo 64.
64 knees! Let's go!
No! Not the knees at 64.
The bee's knees!
Oh, man. But that's when you definitely have some great memories from the 64. That is for sure.
All right. Let's the was it the monkey? No, the gorilla, the elephant in the room. The best game almost of all time that people love is GoldenEye 64. It is the most obvious thing. This shaped anybody's childhood that was anybody back then. It's just, you know what? And it doesn't even, like, the game was awesome. The movie that is one of the best Bonds still to this day.
I love the movie.
And I don't know, like, Pierce Brosnan is not even my favorite Bond, but that movie is probably my favorite Bond movie.
Oh, I just thought of something, Kevin, that I want to tell you about the GoldenEye, the game. You remember the DK mode with the giant fucking heads?
Yeah, of course.
In Fortnite, which we'll talk about later, they did an update on April Fool's Day a couple days ago, and they had basically all the fucking characters having giant fucking heads.
Okay, that is funny. That is funny.
I was like, for April's Fool's Day, it was legendary, dude.
That is pretty sweet. I will admit, Like that mode, like was cool, but it sucked all at the same time
And
because it
mode.
was so easy to get a headshot.
It was
like you could literally just shoot somebody with the PP7 from across the map and they're dead. Like, it was too easy. But
luckily couldn't see that far unless you had a sniper rifle.
Yes,
so there was a lot of corners and stuff and a lot of
for
maps.
sure. I mean that the amount of time we put into that game was insane. I mean, the maps were cool. At the time, the graphics were awesome. Now you look back at these blocks and you're like, what the hell was that? But the concepts were new. The action was different. The shooting was awesome. The storyline matched the movie, which the movie was cool, but then they had their own tweaks within that. I mean, they used some throwback here of your favorite Baron Samedi, Jaws, Odd Job. Like they had some Bond characters, some other maps that were there. I mean, the extra modes. It was absolutely phenomenal.
That game was probably rated so well because the story of the single player was so good, all the guns were good, and the sound was good. The multiplayer mode, you could play for days on end straight. You had cheats in the folders unlocking. It was just such a mesmerizing game that still holds up to this day. Did you ever play it when it got re-released on the Wii or like even the Xbox, Kevin, to see if the graphics were updated? Because I didn't. I'm curious to see like the ratings and how good that was.
I think if they did a full update and re-release, I don't know how people wouldn't love it. There's kids that would get introduced to a phenomenal, game that was mesmerizing. It changed everything. And I mean, and that's just the game itself. If you're talking about what it did as far as us playing with our friends, like that was the initial stages of future online gaming right there. It was huge. You know how many times you would play with 3 other people? Like, it was huge. I mean, I played a lot. Not bragging, just stating I played a lot. And so I would actually play myself versus 3 people because I was really, really good. There's another guy. We was really good too. And we had our little, like, we were equals, but one was better than one thing. And I would, it was like he was better at this, but I was better at this. So it like kind of evened out. And
we would go to a friend's house for like battles during high school, I remember, and going to buddies' houses and ordering pizza, getting pop, and just playing GoldenEye battles like all weekend and stuff. It was perfect time.
It was like the classic Friday night, Saturday night, hanging out with friends, like Blockbuster. When it was a thing, it was like that was classic childhood stuff, and it was you'd stay up. I mean, 3 o'clock might be early if you were hanging out with your friends that night. Like, it was a thing. It was awesome. And you just keep going. And, of course, if you had a friend that was really competitive and they got butt hurt, they might not losing too much. But we played so much. And that's, like I said, playing with your friends was fun. And it just made it last so much longer than just the one player itself.
That's one thing I think the 64 did really well is incorporating that, because then you branched out, because they started with Mario getting the 3D graphics, but then they had GoldenEye. They had Mario Kart 64 and Diddy Kong Racing. Then they had freaking Wave Race even, I remember, was in the early stages and stuff like that. So multiplayer became a big thing because they had the 4 controller ports built into the actual system. And so, shout out, Kevin, by the way, of Mario Kart 64. I had someone challenge you, hashtag Ethan Michael, to a Mario Kart 64 game.
This guy.
Saying he would destroy you, so...
Listen, I am tired of whooping you over the years, bro. Do you not remember Bloody Roar? Come on, man. I'm tired of embarrassing you, man.
What's with every one of our friends wanting to play?
Because I whooped them so bad in these games. Like, I tormented them. They hated I was that good at it. But that's what I'm saying is I played it a lot. I should have been, but I played it so much. I was like, Nobody's ever like 1,000% perfect, but I was damn near impossible to beat it. You remember going to Connecticut when we played with our cousins? They hated, they were excited to get it, but then I didn't play with them because it got to the point where it was not even fun.
You're hurting people's feelings.
I did, anyways, let's go back to shooters.
Back to shooters. So
right?
One of the cool things also about GoldenEye, Kevin, that I actually researched and found out is with the Nintendo 64 controller, but prior to that, people were using arrow keys and like the A button, right? And so now you have like the mouse and 2 analog sticks type of thing, where now this is a standard with your Xbox and your PlayStation controller, along with basically they implemented scoping with sniper rifles, multi-objective missions on difficulty, context-sensitive shot damage, even like AI at the time, and some of those fucking enemies in GoldenEye were fucking so dumb. Like, I remember
they'd be walking in the walls and shit.
Yeah, they were so fucking dumb. But again, these were some things at the time that, I think shooters would evolve eventually, of course, with graphics in today's genres and everything, but it was definitely iconic for the time to help make the shooter genre explode like it has.
If you remember GoldenEye, there is the library where the Russian soldiers are in green, and you might do something, and then they pull out that Distove, as I like to call it, and they do like this big old arm extension, like, but it would be so slow, and you're like, what are you doing? And you like could melee them and slap them to hell. It was, but like at the time it was fun because you make fun of how bad the AI was, but still it was a new level of AI that you weren't, because you've gone from this side screen scrolling or over the top where it's like so distant to now this is getting in the elements of first person, so it's totally different element, just 64 in general, and really paved the way to future gaming, both multiplayer as well as how we actually view the game and gameplay. Obviously, if you take that game and look at how games are played now, there is an element to every form. You got a map, you got your gun, you got your ammo, that's on the screen, how you're doing it first person. It is just, obviously better graphics, but it is played in the same way. Like, it is revolutionary to know that was like 20-something years ago. And actually, 97 is what I have for GoldenEye. So you're talking almost 30 years ago to what that was to now. So, I mean, I have some games that I remember specifically playing. Turok, these games that... GoldenEye came out in 97, and all these games came out afterwards. So they kind of continued similar concepts with different kind of themes. Turok, with the dinosaurs, that was a cool game. It was a different element. Duke Nukem was fun, mostly because of the content of stuff he would say, but it wasn't that dissimilar. And I think my favorite one outside of GoldenEye, as far as a first-person shooter, was South Park.
Was that considered a first-person shooter?
Yes, when you played multiplayer, you would go and there was a gun. You would shoot it and you'd make somebody dance. Do you remember that?
I do remember that. I also remember he had a fucking chicken and shot eggs out of its ass.
So they basically took the GoldenEye version and made it South Park themed and just made comical elements to it. And it was, I thought it was awesome for that regard. I feel like the controls were a little harder for whatever reason, but it was still it was so fun. And I know we played it, but I mean, at this point you're talking, that was it says it came out a year later, but we probably got a little later than that because we played so much GoldenEye. And
we did. We had great times.
And so
friends,
I absolutely like those games. Oh my God. I still have so fun. I still have GoldenEye. I don't have South Park, I don't think. But
I also remember you playing a shit ton of Star Fox 64 too, Kev.
Well, that's not. I don't consider that a shooter in the same elements. But yes, I beat Star Fox to the max because you can play it on the regular difficulty, and then you got to kill X amount of players and take a certain path, and then you got to get these certain elements within the map, and then there's a harder version of that, and then I even medaled those two. Yeah, if you know, you know. Let me put it that way.
But again, we talked about Galaga, we've talked about Super R-Type. Those are in ships, so I figured being fair. Ships like Star Fox, that fucking R-Tank was so badass. I remember do a barrel roll, and then also in their multiplayer, you could play as the ship, but then you had to unlock the bonuses to get the R-Tank.
Exactly.
And the
character with the
run over
bazooka.
his ass.
So that's the one thing that stinks is because those playing as the tank and the little guy were so awesome, but you could only do it on the one map because that's the only map that had the ground.
Oh. Okay.
So it was fun, but it got limited for the multiplayer, the personal one. So they could have done more, but I think it was just cool at the time. But yeah, there was so much meat to that. I think it's just the time they didn't know how to expand it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Now, as in regards to PC gaming at the time, Kev, I know we didn't dabble in too much PC gaming. I remember going to the Hales, and they had, I think, Diablo, and I don't know if they had Doom,
Diablo wasn't Diablo is more of an action.
That's not a shooter, but
Doom.
I'm saying PC wise. So during the time they had Quake, and they introduced online multiplayer, and this is when I think the LANs and AOL started getting big, and the LAN parties, and then you had Counter-Strike and Half-Life start happening. I never played any of those freaking games for the PC. I've heard of them, but never really experienced them. But one thing that was cool when I was kind of researching a little bit about shooters is when Valve was developing Half-Life, the following year after they got their hands on GoldenEye, they had to go back and rework their AI because their enemies and allies were doing basic games, but they weren't, attack and run away, but they weren't doing much else. So GoldenEye, again, pioneering so many other things, that was one thing where, again, just affecting other companies and helping grow the industry, to what it is today.
Absolutely.
Which is so awesome.
And yeah, as you touched upon Doom, we never had it. At the time you needed a computer and you had to have graphics cards and sound cards. We weren't there yet, but as far as Doom goes, I did play it a handful of times on people's computers, and that was really fun too because you got elements of a little bit more gore and things that you didn't get so much. GoldenEye was cool, but you didn't really see blood. Not really.
Unless you unlocked it in the cheats or played Mortal Kombat.
Yeah.
On the Sega back in the day.
But seeing it in Doom with, it meant to be a little darker themed and toned. So that was cool. And that also, I do believe that was before the 64 even. And so that really they all paved a way to develop it. If something had something good, it eventually would be utilized by other companies to help implement and move things forward. So the competition, bred better and better results, which is the kind of society we live in, which is what the point is, right? A healthy competitive balance that, it gives the consumer a better product in the end.
I agree. And as I was talking about kind of the AI, more about that was more the decision algorithm, Kev. And this is where they kind of made a decision tree where if the player would do something, the enemies would have a certain reaction. If you reloaded a gun, they might try to flank you or send a shotgunner in. If you hid for too long, they might try to surround you or throw grenades. Or if they charge you, they might run for cover or lead you towards their allies. So that's where Half-Life's AI might have seemed simple at the time, but again, in 1998, it was revolutionary because it was inspired by GoldenEye from them playing that actual game.
Yeah, and that eventually led to the game Perfect Dark. Now, I am not a fan of Perfect Dark. It is an updated version of GoldenEye, but I thought it was just a straight up rip off, and so I kind of boycotted it. So I think I may have played it once or twice, and because of that, I was like, "This is bullshit." I wanted a different game, so it had the elements of GoldenEye with some updates, and but because of that, I personally I can't respond more than that because to this day, no, I didn't want to play it for that reason.
I believe Rare did still make it, I believe.
I think
And
so
they did use a lot of elements that I heard
A
were
lot.
better for it. I don't know if it had the what was the red chip inside the 64, Kev? Do you
The
remember
Rumble
those?
Pack?
No, not the Rumble Pack.
Did you say-
Inside the system itself.
Oh, that's the memory card.
The memory card, yeah, where I think that used that. It could be wrong though, but yeah, like I didn't play much of their multiplayer. I played it more than one time and stuff like that. I remember the first couple levels you're on a building and stuff like that, but it didn't seem like it was as revolutionary, or they added so many improvements that made it such a higher quality game than GoldenEye. Maybe I just didn't play it enough, but yeah, I'm
Rip off.
GoldenEye OG.
I stand by that. GoldenEye all time. So, I mean, I think that really encompasses the majority of things we were seeing. I think around this time, you know, because I was starting to get more in high school, close to that. That's when we started seeing actually arcade games become better. The gun games were better, where you got the pedals, where you push on it and you're up. Yeah, and then you let go, you're down, you're hiding, and you know you reload by shooting off the screen. The guns, you know, like the actually had the kickback and everything. So they got a lot better, but they were also only playable in the arcades, which costed a lot more money at that time. So it was just easier to play at home. But you saw the evolution happening right alongside with it, for sure.
I don't know what year it was that they came out, but I remember going, I think, into the arcades, and there was two different games I remember playing with guns. One, I think, was called Lethal Enforcers, where it had, like, red guns and blue guns, I think. And then the other one was called Silent Scope.
Oh,
and you
that
were a
game
damn
was the
sniper, and
Yeah,
you're just
I remember that one.
freaking taking people out. I remember that game was so fun.
And it was really cool because if you had the sniper, like you could see the screen right in front, and you could be like looking for a guy that's, you know, you're on top of a building and he's all the way down there. But then if you look in your actual eyepiece, it's scoped in on where you're looking. So it was. That game was awesome. I don't remember if it was around that time or a little
I
later.
don't remember, yeah.
It might have been a little later, but that was good. I mean, they had a Terminator game that had these big machine guns. They had an Alien game with basically the same concept. You know, they had some shotgun games, I think. So nothing. I think our brother.
That was during the time, 1999.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, 1999.
They had a Silent Scope too. That was 2000 though.
Yeah. And I do remember, I don't know if it was the same, it wasn't Silent Scope, but it might have been the one with the pistols. I remember I had to step on the pad and you had to go around, and it was like a shooting game. But that's when the arcades definitely, again, still
They picked up.
Yeah,
They did pick up.
definitely picked up. And even during that time, there was an improvement with like the internet infrastructure, and that's where like Epic came out with Unreal Tournaments, which was like one of the first purely multiplayer FPS games. And so this is where that's when competitive multiplayer gaming starts becoming huge with all the LANs and that sort of thing.
Now, this is really the point of which I start hitting my peak, probably video game playing as well as gun and multiplayer playing. So right around this time, this is now when we start getting into early 2000s, right?
Yeah.
This is when we start getting, PlayStation's been around a little bit. PlayStation 2 is coming out. Xbox is like this new hot product coming out on the line. And these, you're getting more competition. Nintendo was still staying in its own avenue. But, even Sega Dreamcast was competitive at the time. Not too many people had that. It was, as far as I recall.
But shooters particularly, I don't think was Nintendo's focus. They were
No, it wasn't.
solo focused with like Metroid Prime and stuff like that. But that's when you started seeing the consoles, like you said, PlayStation, Xbox, start integrating like the narrative with FPS along with kind of like the PC and the LANs and stuff like that.
Yeah, and which eventually led to, I mean, the big one is Halo, right? I think if you did any online gaming on the Xbox, it started with Halo, and of course that was their staple back then. That was their game because it was only on Xbox. So it started getting multiplayer more and more. I don't exactly remember because I never played original Halo online play. I did play it, and it was fun as a multiplayer. I would do side by side with a friend or I think our brother, but it was a good time, and you definitely would enjoy it. But it started picking up at this point. This is still at this point it's still first person. Now I went a different route, so this is how I remember it, and therefore it's law. So right around 2003-ish is, when I started playing on more the PlayStation, and I started playing a brand series called SOCOM. To this day, this is my heart and soul. My love goes out to my homies, Stevie and Jose. I still talk to these boys in my different state. I love them to death. And it was a different time period. Now, this is where it was a little different because they were third person, so there wasn't too much third person at this time. It was more about the first person. So it was definitely something to get used to. But this is when we started playing online multiplayer, and I got huge into it. But it was crazy what it would do for you as a gamer, because it started introducing things like clans. And what you would do is, it would basically be a tag in front of your name. Mine was T-Dub of Doom. That's a different story. We'll get into that later. But the tag name was something that you were. And I don't want to get into too much content about this because it's, to say the least, it's slightly vulgar. But it's really bad. Some of the stuff you talk about, anyone that's ever been in a online chat room, they are the worst and best time periods of anybody's life because it is a free-for-all. If you had a filter when you think and say things, this is when it went out the window. So at the time, though, it wasn't an open mic. It was, but it wasn't. You had to push a button to talk.
Push to talk.
Yeah, to push to talk. So that means even in the middle of the game, if you're trying to kill people, you had to push it, and you'd get mad because you're like, "Shut the fuck up! There's a guy over there trying to tell you, shut up!" But that's why it was fun to have that element. Now I think it's better not to have that. But at the time, it's like learning how to do something with worse technology, and you appreciate the new tech that comes. So. We used to play all the time, clan battles. It was kind of one of those things where we were such goofballs. We intentionally would not try just to turn around and then play hard because it was more challenging that way. Because at the time, if you're not familiar, you would play rounds, and in the round you get one life. It's not a respawn. They did end up having it, but that's not how it was generally played. So you get one life. So if you died, you'd have to wait until the round was over. Typically, most people would play best of 7, but in clan battles, you might play it longer. You could go up to like best of like 13 if you even wanted to, if I recall. So that's a lot of games. But that if it was clan battling, that's how you would do it. But a lot of times it was best of 7s, and you'd try to pick 3 rounds because different maps favored different benefits if you were stuff like that. But like literally, we would start the map, and it was a race to see who could team kill who first. Like we were just stupid. We're like, and there'd be like 1 or 2 people left and go up against like 8 people, and like it was really not the best.
So friendly
odds.
fire was on.
No, not all the time. It depended on your game matches, but you could do friendly fire, and we played it. And we would. That's the reason why we did it, because as soon as we were team killing all the time. We'd team killed so much, and then we would spend half of that match just laying on somebody's face with our crotch. And just like, yeah, you like that, don't you? Because they're
that's
dead.
That's probably when teabags.
Yes. Oh yeah, that's
before Call of Duty.
Oh yeah, like this was the precursor to Call of Duty. I truly believe that. I mean, Halo was too, but this was more a military format, so it was really transitioned pretty well. And so we would just be stupid, and somebody would literally lay there until the other team came over and finally killed them, and that would be the end of the round. We didn't do anything. We just died. And then we're like, all right, we got, it's like you're playing a best of 7. They got 3 wins. We don't have any. We're like, all right, now we'll start trying to play, and we fucking win those. So, it was stupid.
Any idea what, like, your clan battle record might have been?
Oh, dude, like, that stuff, like, there was none of that really around. We didn't care. Like, I mean, you had kill death ratios back then, and you had rankings, but the rankings were all rigged because you had to do, like, bullshit to get in that starting. Like, it was never really worthwhile. I remember our buddy Jose, when they did a relaunch and they blanked everybody's rank, if you got on right away, he did, and he would play for a little bit, and he had himself as an admiral, which is, there's only 10 admirals in the whole game.
What the fuck?
Yeah, only 10.
Only 10?
So basically you had to be basically at the time cheating, but they even had different areas. Like, there's supposed to be regions, so it was an honor system, so you know how much people honored that. But we always played in the East. That was just where we played. Because if you start going in some of the other ones, like, I remember one of the first times, I think there's a video, and I had almost the exact same experience. I joined the game, and literally somebody's flying over my head. I'm like, what the fuck? And I got up. Because I think it was a SEALs, like, there was a SEALs lobbies. And if you went into the SEALs, that's where everybody was cheating. I mean, it was terrible. Like, but you learned, okay, don't go in those rooms unless you plan on cheating. So that was something I didn't really want to do. I mean, people would find glitches and try to abuse them a little bit, and you'd kind of, if you found it out, you couldn't. As a host, you just couldn't kick somebody out. That's not how that worked. You had to have votes. You had to vote them, and it was majority vote.
Democracy?
Yes, it really was. And that's how that worked. There wasn't one person that just could kick you out. So that came a little bit later on down the road. But, yeah, it was a different time period. And when you were in the lobby, and, you could play, what was the most? I think it was 7 on... No, what was the most people you had at a time? It was either 7 or 8 people you could play on one team. So I think it was 8. So it was 8 versus 8 is, I think, the max you could play. But if you're in the lobby waiting there, there's no time either. So people are more used to, like, Call of Duty where you... I think Jesus is talking to us. If you were watching on video, so he's telling me, "Shut up, Kevin." There's no time. You had to, what we used to call, like, green up. So you had red, and then you had hit ready to go, and then you turn green, and you had to have a majority. I think it was 75%. So if you didn't have 75%, you literally would just sit in the lobby. There was no time. If there were a couple clan members from a different, like, same, because even if you play, like, just rando, you join in. There's usually some clan members. If you're not playing a clan war, they'll follow each other and play in the same rooms. So you might get 2 or 3. But if you had a smaller amount, 2 or 3 could make the difference. And literally, they would purposely not green up, and you're literally sitting for like fucking 20 minutes because they're just like, nah, fuck you, and just talking shit until usually somebody leaves, and then it makes a difference. Like, yeah, it was a little bit of a free-for-all that led to the changes that you see in, like, more Call of Duty nowadays.
And I missed a lot of this whole time period because that's when this was for me after high school. I started getting into dating and working and stuff like that, and so I kind of fell off from gaming for quite a while. I think during this time, after GoldenEye, and, like, I had a GameCube, but definitely didn't play as much. And
I had a GameCube too. So, I didn't know you did.
Yeah. And so then there was other games at the time, other shooters as well. Some I played, some I didn't. Was like, obviously Call of Duty came out 2006, 2005. Resident Evil obviously was starting to be a franchise. Gears of War came out. Mass Effect. So, Battlefield. So you started having, again, these firearm-based combat games starting to kind of build up as well, too, and start coming along.
Yeah, I mean, so I was still playing games. I was still in it. I did get a period where I was out of games for a little bit, but it wasn't yet. So I think that's when we're starting to get, now you're getting time periods of like Xbox 360, that started showing up. And I kind of was going back and forth between Xbox and PlayStation at this time, and I picked up the 360 more. And this is when I started getting into the original Call of Duty, which is not what people know it as now. It was literally like World War II, old school. I would play with our other brother, and it was fun. And it was that co-op. I love co-op games. I'm still a huge fan of them. I don't need to play multiplayer just because I don't, nowadays you don't trust the online gaming as much. But that's a different story. But so I started playing, and then we finally got to World of War Call of Duties. And this was the first introduction of Nazi zombies. And this is a huge element. And this ended up... So I think we ended up sucking Brian back into it at a certain point. So,
yes, you did.
I'm talking... I was the original when it was... I think they called it Nacht der Untoten or whatever.
Yep.
And so that was the first. It was simple. It was just supposed to be a mini game. They did not expect it to be what it was. But once it had the demand... That's when it started building more and more. And then it started coming out more with like the Black Ops and everything. And you'd still even get some of the DLCs and stuff like that. And I even played the DLCs. And some of these maps were awesome. And I still like to this day. And they still added like the Pack-a-Punch, and all this fun element, the online play. If I'm thinking back how it was, I was huge into SOCOM 2. The sequel, SOCOM 3, sucked balls. And the gameplay was different. Just, it kind of ruined it. And so what happened is that hit a hard decline. Well, guess what? Consumer demand is still there for online gameplay. And that's what happened is you start seeing this Call of Duty game come in, and it basically kicked SOCOM out of the realm. It's like not even a relevant game really at all anymore. They've tried to come back a couple times, but they lost their fandom because they took the gameplay and ruined it. It's kind of weird because we want realism and everything, and Call of Duty brings that more. But if you played SOCOM, it was interesting because like you could do this thing where you prone, right? Everyone knows proning, like you go and lay down. Well, in Call of Duty, you go one knee and then you go down. Well, in SOCOM, you would do this thing where you hit it, you start going down, and if you hit it again, you go right back up. So you'd be like doing it fast enough, and your guy's like floating midair, and you look so stupid. And that's not realistic, but it was a fun element, and so that's why it's still like you could. Jose sent me some video of people still playing it now. They've like adapted it to PC, and
the server's still open.
I don't know if it's I don't know how it works. Okay. I think they closed the server. Maybe it might be a mod or something. But they did something, and there are people that still play this game, and it's like it was so throwback. I'm like, holy Granada! Like it was amazing, and but like I said, the demand was still there. So Call of Duty takes over, and you have the Call of Duty franchises itself. The gameplay was actually really fun. I think it gets kind of hidden behind the actual elements of what Zombies did. Zombies really propelled it forward, to be honest with you. At least that's how I remember it. How do you remember it?
I mean, I got a freaking tattoo, 935, because of the goddamn Zombies mode. And you're right, Kevin. Zombies sucked me in. I didn't play much of the solo of it, but the Zombies... Kino der Toten, man, I got obsessed with that map. Ascension. Then I started getting obsessed with the Easter eggs, Kevin, and I don't even know if you even did a lot of those, but that's when I started finding like friends online and stuff like that, and I was taking days off work to fucking do fucking Easter egg runs and shit.
I love it.
Shout out my boys Curtis and Avery, and Andrew. We would freaking just...
Avery's my boy too.
Yeah, so...
Silly little dude.
So we would freaking do Easter egg runs, And then again, it evolved, and that's when they started focusing on story, and they adapted with their mechanics, but they got better from World at War to Black Ops 2. Black Ops 3 was definitely the peak. After Black Ops 3, Black Ops 4, and when they started kind of shifting the companies doing the Call of Duty, because it went to like 3 different companies that was kind of doing it, like Sledgehammer Games, and then it was Activision's the producer. But then Treyarch obviously was the main one I followed, and then there was one other company I forget off the top of my head. Black Ops 4 and till now, a lot of the mechanics started going downhill, kind of like what happened with SOCOM. They still have retained a lot of their fan base because I think they still have some of the solo gameplay, but again, even some of the multiplayer, that's where, again, you have clan battles and stuff. I even played more multiplayer on Black Ops 3, because that's where multiplayer and meeting friends, and gaming is such an interesting thing because you're talking and meeting friends and stuff like that, and I end up sharing personal details of my life and becoming actual friends with these people and even meeting some in real life. And
For real.
It's just an incredible experience. You're gaming and talking to this person for years, and then you kind of meet up and you have kind of that awkward moment, and then it's just like, oh, I know you because I've been playing with you online for all this time, and I've had some awesome memories meeting some of my gaming friends.
Since I didn't play so much on, like, once my zombie era, like Moon and Shangri-La, kind of like in the later '01 to or '09 era, kind of around that's kind of when I faded off for a hot minute for some years. But when I was playing SOCOM, there's no time limit to being in a lobby. I think there is more now, but
there is.
Yeah, but I would be in lobbies with my boys, and we'd be like, all right, it's like 10 o'clock, it's a school night. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna get off, start getting ready for bed. And all of a sudden it's 1 a.m. And we're just sitting in the lobby, just chatting, bullshitting, laughing, having fun.
Yeah.
It was the early stages of, is nerd alert, online friends. That's really what it was. And if you think about it, especially now, it makes more sense. Back then, it was weirder because, why are you spending so much time just talking to these people online? It was such a weird concept. Whereas now you video call people, and you're so detached from somebody so far away. But in reality, what are you really doing when you're with somebody in person? You're just talking to them. Yeah, sometimes you do activities. But for the most part, you're just learning about them. You're interacting. You're socializing. That's what we were doing. And like I said, there's still some people. If you remember FBC back in the day, SOCOM 2, and any of my boys come across this, reach out. I wish I still had some of their contact information. I do have a couple, but new phones, and time happens. You lose, everything just gets lost, and it sucks because I would love to talk to them again because it's just that kind of different. So, but it was also a different time era. So. But yeah, you get to know these people. We're friends. I've met some, so and it's cool. And Brian here, he got into it, and I noticed it, and I know he did a meetup, and I met some of them, and I talked to them and I've never played the games with them just because he knows them, So it's a really cool element that, as I said, one of the best parts about playing video games is playing with people. All right, my favorite is still co-op, and it's still in person. But at the same time, being able to play with somebody, and you don't always have to go against them. Sometimes you're just playing with them and killing stuff together. That is, progressing together and experience it together. That is so fun because, you're just completing something and achieving something, but having fun and being loose. I remember the first night, I think Halo, was it 2 or 3 came out. I played with my friend at the time, and we played it all night, and we beat it. I remember this because it was 6 o'clock in the morning when I first went to bed.
Oh my God.
So yeah, it was insane. We got it started probably at 6 p.m. and we just constant. We'd stop, we'd eat some food, and go right back at it. And it's that's an element that it doesn't feel like it's included in games, but that's why you very much can share a lot of things. As dumb as it can be in a sense too.
I totally agree, Kev, and that's that's kind of how some of the Easter egg runs for zombies kind of went with me. I would make like these guides that I would print out and watch videos and stuff like that and play with my boys. And like, we talked about the challenge of games when we were younger, like, again, Mega Man's, the Donkey Kong Country, Ninja Turtles, all the games from the 80s and stuff like that. So working now together in a multiplayer fashion to try to complete these challenging steps, which was part of the story, was such a unique experience in being basically getting those achievements. And I remember having the best times, whether it was just, okay, let's see what the highest round we can get to was, 30s, 40s, whatever. But now we're doing obviously these steps, and we're spending 3 or 4 hours on this run, basically, of this fucking mission, trying to do 7 to 15 steps on an Easter egg run. And I remember having the best times, looking forward and planning to hang out with my guys. Focus, this is like a fucking mission, like we're in the military and shit, to try to get this shit done. And like, someone fucks up a step and it adds half an hour, or something doesn't happen. And just, man, those were like the best times.
Yeah, and I want to transition at this point. You know, we're kind of just blurring systems at this point. But I think it's more about the intent and what. So, right around, now we're getting, I picked back up into video games probably in the, mid-teens of the 2000s. And I started playing Star Wars Battlefront, right? And at this point, I'm like getting back into it. And I'm enjoying it. The multiplayer for Battlefront sucked because you couldn't speak to everyone. They intentionally did that because Call of Duty players were ruining it with all the people talking trash, being racist, and it was, and it's crazy because if there's so many people I know with different backgrounds, different ethnicities, different sex, whatever. And sometimes, if you get the ones that like playing, like they would tolerate that because sometimes, amongst, the ignorance, some of it was just really funny if you could see through the lines. I know that's hard to understand in this day and age, but sometimes being dumb and ignorant is actually funny. And if you can appreciate that and take life a little easier, like some of the people I know back then, it was easier. Now, I mean, I wasn't like that, but I would see it. And so, like, you just try to be looser, and life is a little easier, in my opinion. But, so this started me picking that back up, and you were hard deep into Call of Duty at this time, I do remember.
I was, and that's when, I didn't necessarily branch out, but this is a little bit before, like, Fortnite came on the scene, and a lot of the multiplayers and the battle royales. Even before that, I remember getting into Borderlands, Kev.
Yeah. So I was gonna get there. Battlefront 2 came out, and then the whole DLC money thing came out, and I've actually boycotted Battlefront 2 to this day. Because some of this is atrocious, but I won't get down that avenue. But basically, I was kind of at a point where I was, looking for something or whatever, and I was going through something at that time in my life. And Brian, he was a fun outlet to be around to kind of, take my mind off things, and he suggested playing this game. I remember it from back in the day. I just remember seeing the graphics. I'm like, oh, I don't know how I feel about that. Brian's like, well, let's just play it. So we go ahead and we do a co-op mode for Borderlands 1. At this point, I think it was like 2018. And I start playing. I'm like, the graphics are cooler than what I remember it being. The cell shade. And then we just started playing it. I'm like, this is so fucking fun. And we literally would be playing every weekend, Saturday nights, every weekend for like 9 months straight. And it was so fun. And we were just objectively doing stuff, being stupid, and just playing that. And we sat side by side. And this is an element that people don't understand is a kid who grew up playing video games. All right. Believe it or not, I am not a big drinker. I never really was. I barely drink nowadays, but my drink, if you will, at times to take the edge off, and this might sound horrible, is sometimes playing video games. It's the mind release, the change, the not thinking about the stresses of life. And sometimes it's video games, sometimes it's TV shows, sometimes there's other elements, and just feeling able to take that quote edge off, my drug, if you will,
or escaping.
It's just escaping, whatever it is. Like it is a helpful element, and for what I was going through, and just it was extremely helpful. But even now, it's just joy. I like killing shit. Like
video games are gonna rot your brains.
So
Kevin.
yeah, it is what it is. Like I like to blow shit up. And when you play Borderlands and you start getting into the content and hearing the story was so good and the lines are good, the characters, the concept. It is what it is now, and I do believe sometimes that's from some influences that are less than stellar in my opinion. But generally, I've played every game. I have every game other than the newest 4 one that came out last year because I don't have a 5 yet. But I mean, I love it, and I will still play it because it's just an enjoyable concept. I love hearing the lines, the guns, what you can do. I'm an achievement whore, so I'm trying to get every last kill with that assault rifle that I can.
And they made your favorite movie based on.
Fuck you. That's not even like. All right, I will not watch that movie again. You'd have to pay me for me to even consider it. So yeah, I Borderlands is my big thing right now, and it has been for since 2018. I really haven't dabbled too much. I did do the Metroid, as I said, but yeah, it's in my veins hard, and that was an experience, and it takes you to a different level, and then I was doing that with Brian, but then I got into 2 and I started doing stuff on my own because time, life changes. His schedule changed, that changed mine, so we started having to do things a little different. But then Fortnite came out, and that was a big deal for this guy.
Yeah, before I get deep into Fortnite, this kind of is where shooters started evolving into like all these like sub-genres as far as different things, because you had like tactical shooters like Rainbow Six Siege, then you have the hero shooters like Overwatch even, and then you had arena shooters like Quake, then the battle royales like Fortnite and PUBG start popping up. We talked about Borderlands being this loot shooter, and then again Gears of War being like a cover-based shooter. So you started having all these different types of genres popping up and expanding and expounding on that even to this day. I think one of the popular ones is like the Ark one. I haven't played that one.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
But yeah, that's where you started seeing a lot of this, even Overwatch and PUBG and Valorant. Some of these games I haven't even played. Then you have story-based ones with like Destiny 2 and, I know even Apex Legends when you have. And that we'll talk about that in a little bit as we wrap up here, as far as like the different subscription models that has changed, where you just had to buy the game when you originally had it with a lot of these systems, to where now they have free to play games, but then they have like subscription models. They have, pay to play as far as in different aspect, or battle passes type things. They call it games as a service, is like Fortnite, where again you get the game, but then if you want these cool skins or a cool backpack or a helmet or a dance, you can pay to get those things. It's cosmetics, I guess you could say.
I've always said this for like ever. Why do they keep reissuing Black Ops 1, Black Ops 2, Black Ops 7? Just make a base game and sell DLCs, because people want the content of the previous one, and they just add it to it, and then that way they can play within the same element. I know it's not a moneymaker, but for a game player to be able to use these elements consistently versus having to get a new game, versus, you can tie it all together. I think that would be, to me, the ideal thing to do, which in a sense like games like Fortnite have, where your subscription or your time periods, right? It's like every quarter seasons, or something. Yeah, seasons, right? The problem with that is once that season's over, you can't get it again.
Which is why they kind of bring it back sometimes. But you're absolutely right. But even the Call of Duty model, the reason they keep doing that is because this is where they are changing the story of the game. They're adding or changing mechanics. They're adding DLCs on that. And then eventually, as a couple of the games go by, they're also updating the Unreal Engine and the graphics as well too. So again, it's just a money play and a business thing.
That's what it is, because
really what it comes
think about it.
to.
If you could think about all the Black Ops, yeah, even if the story's line, you go to a main menu for Call of Duty Black Ops and you got, this run, and all the DLC content with it, and you could still generally update it. That way you're using updated graphics, updated tactics with the old versions. I would love that. That to me would be really cool. Now, that doesn't mean, like I said, it's not going to generate the money that they want. That's why they do DLCs the way they do, because of generating money and content. But for a fan, that would be ideal world. Whereas you just have this large generic platform and you just add more and more to that content. Maybe you change it every system or something, but even then, systems are coming out way too frequently, if you ask me.
Well, that's kind of similar, like you said, where they're just updating it. That's more like your World of Warcraft and your Elder Scrolls Online type of thing, and they're just adding a new season or DLC or whatever. But again, it depends on the company and the publisher and how they want to do it. And now, again, online multiplayer is worldwide. You have streaming and content creation. You have, esports and e-gaming now, which is crazy.
People are
making a living off of
literally millions of dollars fucking playing a video game. And you know what dads used to tell us? Quit wasting your fucking time. And now kids are got a job doing this shit. It's fucking insane. But you know what? More power to them. I mean, it's kind of crazy what it is. I haven't really watched any. It's more about being aware. But it's just a different element of how it's developed. It's gotten bigger. It's just expanded. And I only expect it to continue. You're going to get to some real 3D stuff coming, where with headsets and just, it's going to expand where it's almost like literally a virtual reality element. I do believe we're going to see in the future at some time.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of where we'll be probably wrapping up a little bit with this episode, Kev, because you are right. I mean, we talked about the beginning stages of multiplayer, the different types of shooters, what it's kind of expanded to, and now it's going to be going into VR with the headsets. It's going to be going into AI as far as that sort of thing. And so, that is still obviously, I think, on the early stages, but again, 5-10 years from now, that's going to be, who knows, the norm. Like, Back to the Future and Fifth Element and shit like that.
Dude, Japan literally has like robotic servers right now. You don't think that we're going to have like real VR elements a lot sooner? Like, it is bound to happen. And that's the thing is, I don't 1000% believe this is going to be ultimately better for gaming, because like I said, sometimes, as I said with SOCOM, an element that is fun is that it's dumb, it's goofy, it's flawed. And when you remove some of that, that makes it actually less fun, right? If it's too realistic, there's obviously elements to that, but if you've ever seen even they have people doing VR things where they bar fight and stuff like that, and they literally bend people in half and they look like blobs flying anywhere, that's completely unrealistic, but it's super funny because it's dumb. And so I think games are games, and let's not forget it. Now, that doesn't mean you can't have an element of super realistic and you want to literally act like you literally have a gun going around. I know the military uses elements of this for training. They literally do. But at the same time, I want to be able to drop my nuts on somebody's face if I kill them, I want to do that. There are things. I want to bust my crack down over their face and pretend I'm farting or something. This happened. We've hump these dead bodies because you go in and out of prone and you look like you're we were absolute animals. I still am, but we were too. And so you can't lose that, I think, with gaming. It can't be too real because then it's reality. The point is, for me, and I think there are plenty of people out there, it's a release. It's the real world sucks at times, and this is just a fun way to get out of it.
Well, it's not even necessarily the release, Kev. I think as we kind of wrap up the episode, is also about, I think, not only necessarily being a release and escape, just meeting people and finding
that
people
helps too. That helps too.
I was talking to my friend Ethan earlier about how he's playing Roblox with his nephew.
Dude, that's a different
And
element. Though.
and again, you have to be careful because again, there are creeps obviously online.
Yeah,
and
like
stuff
the creator.
that.
I don't know if you heard about that recently.
I didn't hear about that, but again, so obviously you need to be careful as far as with ages and your kids playing games and stuff like that, and definitely monitor that. But again, there is good people, and meeting some of these people, you can develop some really good friendships, and even your family get closer, like Kevin has talked about with me and him. So I think again, shooters are fun. They're going to evolve even more. I know they're even like, there's in VR, there's like VR chat where you can dress up your skin and stuff like that and like walk in like virtual reality worlds and like chat and stuff like that. Kind of like instead of gaming, but you're in a lobby and going into these worlds dressed up and with the VR headsets and stuff. So again, a lot of other things are happening in games and stuff like that, along with the technology where it's just evolving more and more, where, again, it's going to be like the movie Ready Player One, where you're literally in a VR headset and you can explore different worlds. Fortnite's already doing that, Kevin, as far as with the different games, where they have, like, Rocket League and racing. They have, again, Battle Royale. They already have, like, RPGs built into it. So, again, it's happening, and it's going to evolve more and more.
Yeah, so I mean, as a fan, I'm excited. I hope the content like Borderlands I like. So creators, don't be stupid. Sometimes you make content that sucks, and you got to be careful. But like a movie, but we won't go down there. So ultimately, this has been a huge influence on us throughout our whole life as we've kind of gone through the history, and still is an element. Our kids play it, video games, and it is influential, and it's something that I don't think is going away. Technology ain't going away, not unless the world just stops, and you could talk about an apocalypse at that point. But while it's here, it's going to be here, and just use it in the right way. And for us, we like to shoot some bitches, as I like to say.
Yeah, use it as an escape, experiment, try new games, meet new people, and just enjoy life playing games, I think.
Yeah. All right. I think at that end, we'll call it, wrap that up here. And, just once again, everyone, thank you for listening. Any comments, I'll make sure Brian answers them because I'm not reading them,
My God.
Brian, can you find us?
Yeah, thanks for supporting us. These nerds, we're on different social media platforms. We're on TikTok. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook, where Kevin sometimes will answer.
I try. I try.
On Tuesdays, we come out on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And then Thursdays, we come out to YouTube. So make sure you're following and subscribing us. And hopefully you enjoyed a little bit of a different episode today.
Yeah. We're going to try to do whatever we want to. So suck it, as the X would say.
See you later.
All right, peace out.
Bye.